Hello, and welcome back to the PNN. My name is Parker Taft. Today is day 19, and the first episode of our Historical Figures Spotlight. Today we're talking about the great, the one, the only, Socrates. Of course, this is a PNN production. So let us get started, shall we? So, who is Socrates? And I like to preface that this is just a quick and brief overview and it's in no way an in-depth discussion or look at the man, his life, or his legacy. This is just to give you a brief glimpse of who he was, what he did, why he's important, and what lessons we can learn from him. I will leave documents and links in the description below for anyone who's interested in further research or reading. I highly advise it, but again, this is not a history channel, this is a self-development channel, so I will not go overboard into the tangents and elucidations. So, with that preface out of the way, let's begin. Who is Socrates? Well, he was a Greek philosopher who lived between 469 and 399 BCE. Many attribute him to be the founder of modern Western philosophy. He was an Athenian, and interesting enough, he was born in what we would consider now a middle-class, middle-income family. He wasn't rich beyond belief, but he wasn't poor. And actually, he started life out as a sculptor, following in the footsteps of his father. His mother had been a midwife, and then he married, had 3 sons, who, according to Plato and Xenophon, 2 gentlemen who I will be referencing in later works in this series, said that they were quite dull and did not match the wit or understanding of their father. He was the teacher of Plato and lived a life of poverty. This is after he had his encounter with the oracle at Delphi, which is mentioned below. Instead, he busied himself with the question of an understanding of the true meaning of life, specifically in the development of moral character. He initially liked looking at Pythagoras and Anaxagoras, 2 natural philosophers who tried to define what the natural world was about, but he quickly strayed away from that as it did not hold his interest as well, and he decided to focus on what moral character is, what it means to be good, what it means to be honest, what it means to be a productive member of society and a true citizen of the state. This led many young and wealthy men to flock to him to learn and imitate, although he adamantly insisted he wasn't a teacher and refused all money to be paid for teaching. Fascinating. And many of you ask, why would a bunch of young and wealthy men flock to him, since he is ostensibly in the record, at this point in history, a poor, fat beggar? Well, mainly, he went about questioning all the traditional sources of authority, much like the 1960s hippies, although less radical. He would go around questioning generals, politicians, priests, and general civil and social leaders, asking them questions like what it means to be good, what symbolizes a good member of society, etc. He's believed to have participated in the Battle of Potidæa, which was during the Peloponnesian War, briefly mentioned before during my speech about Pericles, where he saved Alcibiades. Alcibiades is the notorious Athenian traitor. He will not be mentioned in this channel. He went to the oracle at Delphi shortly thereafter, which led him towards his philosophical ways, after one of his friends jokingly asked the oracle, "Is there none wiser than Socrates?" To which the oracle responded, "No." Socrates, not believing himself to be wise, immediately set out to try to disprove the fact by asking all the traditional sources of wisdom in society and in the city-state of Athens in particular. So it came to pass that he asked, and he found out that the common people, the people who, your average merchants, stonecutters, carpenters, they had more wisdom and knowledge in their accumulated years than the wealthy, rich merchants, politicians, and generals. And he found that those who thought and society thought were the most wise, were actually the most lacking in wisdom, while those who thought in the particular section of society were particularly unwise, such as the lowly carpenter or farmer, actually possessed more wisdom than those in society who claimed had the most wisdom. So an interesting irony there. Only surviving accounts of his life and description of his personality come from Plato, his student, who described him as a man of great insight, integrity, self-mastery, and argumentative skill. There's a bit of debate if Socrates actually existed, because there's only a few brief records of him outside of Plato, specifically in the writings of Xenophon, who was also supposedly a student of Socrates. So we're unsure if it was a a truly accurate historical record, since his accounts differ between Plato and Xenophon slightly, not to a horrible extent, but there's questions if he was a true historical figure, or if the Socrates that we read about in Plato and later in the brief mentions in Xenophon, if it is truly the man that Socrates was, or if it is an idealized version, or a character made up of the amalgamation of several different individuals who went by a similar name to this. So there's a bit of scholarly debate about that, but most historians agreed that in one form or another there was a Socrates at one time. What form he took and what his teachings and beliefs actually were are not known. Like Jesus Christ or Pythagoras, the writings weren't written down in his lifetime. It was written down, in this case, decades later, unlike the Bible or Pythagoras theories, which were written down hundreds of years later. But still, it leaves open to interpretation and artistic license, which historians and scientists don't necessarily agree when trying to piece together a firm record of historical events. And many of you are asking, well, this guy was so great, how did he die? Well, basically, he was tried and executed by the Athenian government for impiety and corrupting the youth. We have to go back to Athens at this time. Athens had just lost the Peloponnesian War. It had been horrible. 30 tyrants period, 30 tyrants being 30 dictators of the city, had overlorded the city and basically turned it into a fascist police state before that term even existed. And one of them was, ironically, one of Socrates' students. And so Socrates had made a lot of enemies in his questioning and challenging of the authority of the traditional elites and rulers of the city, both socially, economically, and politically. So they all conspired to remove the thorn in the side that was Socrates. So they brought him in on charges of impiety and corrupting the youth. Corrupting the youth by turning them away from the gods, the traditional Athenian gods like Athena, Zeus, etc., and towards foreign gods, while he himself refused to take part in religious ceremonies. Well, many believe that Socrates had his own personal philosophies and beliefs, and that he never expressly rejected the Greek gods, or the pantheon of Greek gods, or was atheistic in any nature. They do believe he strayed away from the traditional road of what was acceptable in society because of his ravenous pursuit for what truth really was, what the heart of the matter, what really was in the depth, and what was really true and what really wasn't. So the jury came back and said they found him guilty. Many of his friends were preparing to help him into exile. Many people expected him to flee into exile rather than be executed. But Socrates, standing up for his beliefs and believing that he would respect the majority vote of his peers, said that he would face whatever sentence they gave him. So, again, many people thought the jury would just exile him, but no, the jury came back narrowly in a majority vote, ordered him to be executed. Since he was such an esteemed member of society in certain sectors, they thought any sort of brutal public execution would be stir too much unrest, especially after the end of the Peloponnesian War and the unrest that was still sweeping the city. So they ordered him to be executed by drinking hemlock. Hemlock is a deadly poison coming from a particular tree. It's used throughout antiquity, but mostly as a poison for assassins. This was one of the few times that hemlock is mentioned as being a tool of execution. And it was said that he was engaged in philosophical discussion to the end. And ironically, he asked that a chicken, actually it was a rooster to be more specific, be given in payment because he owed a rooster to a man. Now, historically speaking, we don't know if it was an allegory for the boatman for the river Styx, or if it was indeed he owed a man a rooster. But it's kind of funny that his last words were resolving a debt. This goes to show you the honor of the man, that he did not wish to pass away without all his debts being attended to. Moving on swiftly. So why is Socrates important? Why would I care about an old codger, born thousands of years ago, who talked and stirred trouble up in ancient Athens? Well, really, there's a few. One, he laid the foundation of Western philosophy and thinking. Basically, most of modern day political, legal, social thought, and even modern day philosophy, everything stems from Socrates. You don't get the Stoics, you don't get the Epicureans, Aristotelians, you don't get Thomas Aquinas, you don't get Nietzsche, you don't even get Karl Marx and Freud without Socrates. Most of what we consider modern Western society, in terms of the academic and the cultural, stems from the initial teachings of Socrates, or those teachings that have been related to us via Plato and Aristotle, and to a lesser extent Xenophon. So that makes him quite important. Second, he invented the Socratic method of teaching. Now, for those of you who aren't in law school, I will describe it to you. It is basically a method of teaching involving asking questions and provoking arguments to force students to delve deeper into their positions on particular topics and reevaluate the facts. It forces deeper thinking to find the truth within the truth. What is really true and what is really false? And as I said, it is still used in all modern law schools to this day. I'm sure many first-year and law students are nodding their heads in agreement and crying quietly because of the withering hail of arguments and questions that their law professor has flung at them from across the classroom floor. Third, Socrates' philosophy and thought experiments paradox, too many to list, and many overlap with Plato's, but this really is is a critical contribution to modern Western thought, and you really should go through and look and read and watch some of these. TEDx, a YouTube channel with educational videos, has some excellent videos on these thought experiments and paradoxes that I highly advise you check out. It has both Plato and Socrates. Learning, the value of constant learning, the ability to question everything, which, especially nowadays, is something very important. You know, in the era of fake news, what to trust and what we can't, we need to reaffirm the ability to delve deep and to find essential truths that are universal. You then have governmental issues. As we all know, just as I just said it, Socrates was executed by his own government for ideas that were considered heretical at the time. And we believe that this way he stoically, before that term was coined, faced his execution, and from his own teachings, that the best way to serve your nation is by talking freely and openly about the truth, and by serving your community. And that you can serve it in many different ways, military, politically, economically, but you must be always serving the truth. What is true and what is not? Whether you're a merchant who's selling wares that may be slightly damaged, you must be truthful about it, because that is the truth of the matter. A soldier reporting in to truthfully assess how many enemies you're facing. A politician truthfully stating what the state of the state or country is in. Because if you don't, it hurts you in the long run. For the merchant, he'll lose a customer. For the general, he'll lose a battle. For the politician, he'll lose a country. Or an election, depending on how bad his blunder is. And I find a quote that I think is especially poignant nowadays is, better to suffer an injustice than commit one. Many of you will find that this ties in with the philosophies of Gandhi, Mandela, and Martin Luther King Jr. The ideas of passive resistance, of peaceful protest, and stoic, solemn determination in the face of injustice. They were always very important, that we do not react violently or strike out against them, because we would be doing an injustice in the face of an injustice. Instead, it is better to bear the injustice as our cross to bear, so to speak. And through our work and our determination, we will eventually overcome those injustices, both by garnering public support and by giving us the internal strength and confidence to pursue what needs to get done to eliminate those injustices and better our own lives. All right, so moving on. Lessons from the life of Socrates. Now, since he lived quite a long life for an ancient Athenian, He has quite a few quotes, again, coming from Plato, and life lessons that we can extract from it. And now I cannot, in any hopes, cover them all in this rather short episode, so I'll just do a quick overview of the ones I found most important while doing my research. Wisdom begins with wonder. As always, when trying to find the essence of something, we have to start from a feeling of astonishment. You know, if you walk into a forest or a library or a classroom thinking you know everything and have no capacity left to wonder, you'll find it very dull, very boring. You'll find that you don't learn anything. That's because you've closed your mind off. And today, I think many of us have lost the capacity to wonder, to stare up at the sky in astonishment and marvel at the beauty that is nature, how it could have created such a perfectly aligned system all by itself without any sort of human intervention. So we must begin to find our basis once again and look at the skies, at the books, at the accumulation of human and natural knowledge, and look at it and wonder and see, wow, what have we accomplished? Look at this. And especially given the tools, look at the Great Pyramids, for instance. I cannot see them and not be in awe of that accomplishment. So, in order to learn and become wise, we must first wonder, contemplate, and be astonished by, so that we gain the questions and the motivation to dig deeper. Never sacrifice your deepest beliefs to popular pressure. Now, this is more not so much as a lesson from him, but more of a lesson from his behavior, specifically during his trial and his willing acceptance of his execution. Basically, it is he never sacrificed his beliefs. His belief in the pursuit of truth and his belief in the wonder and effectiveness of majority rule prevented him from saving his own life. He would not bow to the popular pressure of his friends in the community for him to flee into exile. Instead, he stoically accepted his fate as that was chosen by him by the people of his state, and that he would not recount his beliefs and the actions that he took in order to save his life, nor would he disobey the will of the people by fleeing to save his life. Humility is the greatest virtue. We all must be humble. We should not believe that we are the epitome or essence of anything. We are not perfect. All human beings are imperfect. So we must accept that and be humble in our praise and our acceptance of praise. Respect other people's individuality. This is a reason, at least stated by Plato, why he never wrote his teachings down, because he did not want to give his preconceived notions and pass it on to future students and generations. He wanted them to find things out for themselves. He would give them the tools. He would ask the questions that would invoke contemplation of certain topics, but the conclusions and the decisions that came out of that contemplation would be the students and the students alone. Plato disagreed on this particular point, but that's why Plato wrote stuff down. But that is not for us to consider. Listen thoughtfully and carefully. I think it's important that we all learn, and this ties in with the 25 Rules of Civility review that I did on Friday. We must look and listen thoughtfully and carefully. We must understand what the person is saying and engage with them on a deeper level than what we normally would. Eye contact, acknowledging them through head movements, speaking, a pat on the back, a nudge on the arm, just so we can understand them better and understand ourselves better. Know thyself. Now, this seems a pretty straightforward comment, but really, how many people truly understand who they are? Many of us are rushed through life, rush, 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 rush. We have to get good grades in school. We have to get into a good college. We have to get a good job. We have to get married. We're rushed through life, and then towards the end of life, we don't know who we are or what we were supposed to do on this earth, because we allowed society to mold our expectations, our beliefs, our wishes, our dreams, and our desires. So we must, especially in these early years of teenage and adulthood, we must look into ourselves, do some introspection, look at some of the questions and thought experiments of Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle, and explore ourselves more deeply. This is why I believe meditation and journaling are effective methods, because it gives you the peace of mind, the calm, the tranquility to look deeper into yourself and answer the important questions. And no doubt our passion, our life's path will change over time, but the true meaning of our life, the true thing that we were placed on this earth to accomplish, will always be there. The road towards it may change, but it will always be there. Have a sense of humor. Don't take yourself too seriously. Again, something I think we were lacking nowadays, that people sometimes take statements made in jest or humor more seriously than they should. And I think we should all learn not to take ourselves too seriously. Again, I think that ties back in with humility. We are not the end-all be-all. We are not the supreme beings. We do not know everything. The average person knows 1/billionth of all human knowledge and 1/trillionth of all knowledge that there is. Well, actually, it's 1/quintillionth of all knowledge that there is in the universe. So let that sink in for a minute. So, if you can't crack a laugh at a funny joke, or, laugh at take a laugh at your own expense. No, I'm not saying you surrender and allow yourself to be humiliated. No, no, no. Assert yourself. But if it's just a quick sarcastic quip or joke between friends, or a comedian saying something out of hand, it's not necessarily something you should get angry or irritated about. So, I'll be able to identify a good, well-meaning joke, even if it's off-colored, and not take it too seriously or take its meaning to heart. And I'll end with a few quotes. The way to gain a good reputation is to endeavor to be what you desire to appear. That's pretty straightforward. Basically, if you want to be good, you have to act good. You have to reach out to people and develop rapport with them. And through that rapport, develop a good reputation with them. Therefore, as word spreads of you, you will gain a good reputation by being good. Second, to move the world, we must first move ourselves. I think that's important, and goes back to when we first started this 30-day challenge. We find it very hard to start new habits or new processes in which to better our lives and break old bad ones. So, and you see many people out there, especially self-help gurus, who say, you can move the world, yada, yada, yada. We can, you can reach for the stars. Well, you can. But if you're not willing to take action, it's pretty much pointless. You can read every self-help book that there is out there, take every self-help course. But if you're unwilling to take action on what you learned, then you can't change the world. You can't move the world because you're unwilling to move and change yourself. It's not living that matters, but living rightly. I think this comes back to the meaning of our lives and our life's work. Many, many millennia ago, a person's life's work was basically what their father did and what their father did before them, and they took pride in that. Nowadays, we all have our own individual paths to follow, and we have the freedom to explore a multitude of opportunities. But we need to learn that just because we're a lawyer, a doctor, a garbage man, a teacher, a political activist, or a volunteer, we all need to act in certain ways that benefit ourselves and the community. Participating in elections, volunteering your time to help others, donating extra food or money that you may have, being nice and civil to everyone you interact with. Now, like I said, no human being is perfect, so I don't expect you to do it all the time. But it's important that if we want a good society, we must first model what we think is good in our society in ourselves. If we want everyone to live right, we must first live right ourselves. And then lastly, be as you wish to seem. And that ties in with the idea of the way to gain a good reputation. So basically, if you want to be rich, then you have to go out and work hard to become rich. Develop a business, work those extra long hours, invest, buy an apartment building. If you wish to be, if you wish to have, big muscles and look like a bodybuilder, then go out and work out and do what needs to be done to get that body. You know, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride, so the saying goes. And I think many people today don't realize that you can't wish anything into being as much as we may hope so. We may have luck every now and again, we may have good fortune, but unless we're willing to go out and put the hours in, put the miles on the treadmill, the hours in work, the effort of lifting those 100-pound weights, you're not going to accomplish much in your life, and you're going to go through it. You won't be directing your own life. You'll merely be floating along you'll be going with the flow. You'll be going where the majority of people want you to go, what society thinks you should do. If you want to be a social media manager or influencer, then go out and start working to become one. If you want to become a teacher, then go out and start helping people. Tutoring, that's a good way to get started if you want to become a teacher. If you want to be a Wall Street financial guru, then go out and start learning the Financial Times. You're not going to, learn that by working 9 to 5 as a grocery store clerk or something like that. Not to say some people spend their entire lives working as grocery store clerks and get a lot of satisfaction out of it. But if you want something or wish for something, then merely the act of wanting or wishing is not going to accomplish it. You need to go out and do it, and do the task that you need to accomplish that wish or want. So that rounds out this Saturday's episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did so, don't forget to like and subscribe. Click that bell button for notifications. As always, I look forward to your comments in the comments section, both on how you're doing on the 30-day challenge, any advice you can have on how can I improve this channel and topics you think I should cover, as well as any of your personal opinions on the topics discussed. I'm more than willing to listen to anything you guys have to say. As always, I will leave my sources and further reading down in the comment and the description section below so that you can do your own research and dive deeper into the topics discussed here. As always, this is the PNN broadcast, signing off.